The time is now 11:05. Peter Alvarez chairing the first Civilian Review Board public meeting for the City of Boston. I'm going to turn it over to Administrative Assistant for OPAT, Benjamin Tillman, who's going to go over that language access items.
All right, thank you very much, Peter. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this morning's Civilian Review Board meeting. My name is Ben Tillman, and I am OPAT's Administrative Assistant. This public meeting is public, and it is being recorded. All members of the public currently have their cameras turned off. And before we move into today's agenda, there are a few housekeeping items that I want to go over. First, we have turned on Zoom's auto captioning feature. Each person will need to opt in to see these captions. Select the live transcript button on the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen to see these captions appear. OPAT staff, you can also see these instructions on the slides on your screen. And the Mayor's Office of Language and Communication Access is providing language interpretation services today in American Sign Language, Spanish, Mandarin, Vietnamese, Haitian Creole, and Cantonese. To hear this meeting in any of these languages, select the interpretation button on the toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen and select the language channel that you need. I'll ask each of the language interpretation teams to introduce themselves and explain how to opt into the language channels in their specific languages. And then after they have all introduced themselves, I will open up those channels so everybody can opt in if you need. Can we please start with the Spanish interpretation team?
Good morning, everyone. My name is Erika Perez, and my colleague Gabriela Herrera will be providing Spanish interpretation today, and I will explain in Spanish how to join the channel. Buenos días, mi nombre es Erika Pérez. Con mi colega Gabriela Herrera vamos a estar interpretando del inglés a español. Para que usted pueda unirse al canal, por favor, vaya a la parte de abajo, la barra horizontal, y presione la tecla Interpretación de idiomas. Luego seleccione el idioma que desea escuchar. Después de seleccionar, usted entrará en la reunión del idioma español. Si está usando su celular, hay 3 puntitos y busca interpretación. Luego escoge español y finalizado. Gracias. All set. Thanks.
Hello, my name is Tina. My colleague Terry and I will provide the Chinese Mandarin interpretation for today. 大家好，我是您的普通话翻译 Terry 和我会半个小时一换。一会儿呢，他们打开了翻译功能之后，请您选择我们的普通话的功能。一会儿见。到了频道，欢迎您跟我们打个招呼。祝您今天会议愉快。Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Yuen, Vietnamese interpreter. Xin chào các anh chị, tôi là thông dịch người tiếng Việt hôm nay. Nếu cần ngôn ngữ tiếng Việt, xin tìm cái thanh điều khiển ngang ở phía dưới màn hình, bấm vô to Interpretation, sau đó anh chị chọn vào ngôn ngữ tiếng Việt. Hiện tại là chị đang tham gia cái buổi họp bằng tiếng Việt và những cái thứ tiếng khác, và xin vui lòng hãy chọn ngôn ngữ mà anh chị cần thiết. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Cynthia, and my colleague Sadak will be the one doing the interpretation in Haitian Creole. I'm gonna say the instructions in a Haitian Creole. Pour interprétation créole haïtien, allez dans contrôle bas, dans partie en bas écran, et puis cliquez sur interprétation. Après ça, cliquez sur langue que vous avez entendu, qui c'est créole haïtien. Kounia, vous avez accès à réunion en créole haïtien. Merci. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anna. I'll be a Cantonese interpreter for the meeting today. 大家早晨啊！我哋今天早上廣東話同聲翻譯原因，見到個地球嘅時候，見到個圖標揀廣東話 Cantonese 會去到廣東話嘅翻譯頻道。如果你用手機嘅話，麻煩你撳3個點，再揀更多，再去到 Cantonese， 亦都去到廣東話翻譯頻道。唔該晒 ，Thank you so much. All set.
Thank you very much to our interpreters. And just as a reminder, to all of our panelists and, all of our board members and other speakers. Please speak one at a time and don't speak very quickly so that all of our interpreters and our ASL interpreters are able to keep up. If anyone has any audio problems, please let us know in the chat and we'll fix it as quickly as we can. I will now pass it over to our CRB chair, Peter Alvarez.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you to all the interpreters. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us here at the first Civilian Review Board meeting of 2022. My name is Peter Alvarez, and I'm the chair of the Civilian Review Board. Per the City of Boston's ordinance establishing the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency, OPAT, which took effect on July 1 of 2021, we have called a public meeting of the CRB. Before we do the introduction, just some housekeeping for the my fellow board members here. Before you speak, if you could raise the hand emoji, the little raise hand at the bottom of your Zoom screen so that the interpreters have time to see who's speaking and so folks aren't speaking at the same time. To the extent you aren't speaking, if you can, mute yourself so that if there's any background noise, folks aren't hearing it. And please introduce yourself when you speak for the first time. That way folks kind of get a sense of who you are. So this morning, we're going to run through this agenda here. We will discuss the 2022 meeting calendar, OPAT Executive Director's Report, Complaint Summary and Disposition for case file number 29, Other Business, and Adjournment. So in the Other Business section, just other items that you'd like to discuss either at this meeting or put on the agenda for the next meeting. I'd like to acknowledge and introduce our Civilian Review Board members. To the extent you're on, just wave when we say your name. So joining us this morning, we have Natalie Carithers, Reverend Wayne Daly, Joshua Dankoff, Ann Hernandez, Amy McNamee, Tara Register, B. Chris Sumner, and I think that's 8 of our 9 members. And if you could assist, is Carrie Mays here? I'm not sure if I saw her.
Yes.
Oh, thank you, Carrie. And Carrie Mays. So this is your Civilian Review Board members. So next slide so we can get to the review of the 2022 calendar. So this is the CRB calendar, as well as the OPAT and AOP calendars. This was voted on by the OPAT Commission. We took into account any holidays or special days that were here so that we could get the most people into the meetings as possible, and tried to avoid any conflicts and thought thoroughly about this. So want to open it up to any board members if they have questions on these dates. So our next meeting would be Tuesday, August 9th for the CRB. Right now, at the moment, it's envisioned that our August meeting will also be virtual, and starting in the fall, we will be in person, but that's pending the COVID situation, pending OPAT's office, still getting up and running in terms of getting furniture and everything. But it's envisioned that at the moment, the August meeting would be virtual, and then the meetings in the fall thereafter will be in person. But that's not, obviously it will be subject to ongoing kind of circumstances with OPAT and with COVID. Anyone have any questions about these dates? And if you have any conflicts with the civilian, all you need to worry about for the board is the Civilian Review Board dates. And to the extent you have any conflicts, you can reach out to OPAT staff and let them know. But any other questions on these dates, August 9th, 2022, and then November 15th, 2022. Okay. All right, if there's no discussion, we'll move to the next part of the agenda. And it's the OPAT Executive Director's Report from the Executive Director, Stephanie Everett. Stephanie, I'm going to hand it over to you to give the report.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Happy to see you all. Hopefully warmer weather is coming
up. So I will give an update on what's going on in our office since I've last spoken to you all. And so, sorry, I'm just pulling up my report. I just had it. And then I moved. So for those who did not hear I'm working on my speech about working on more than one screen. So let me just pull it back up. I just had it and I'm looking at the wrong. Oh, here we go. So the first thing I want to talk to you all about is the FY23 budget. So for FY23 OPAT budget is $1,465,684. There's a link that's going to be dropped so you can see more information about the details of that. It is an increase of $165,000 over FY22. The key investments there's 3 key investments that I want to talk to you about today. I've mentioned to them during the retreat, but they were included in the budget, and they are money for a community mediator position. In our ordinance, it did call for a mediator to work on complaints that are of less serious nature that could be worked out between, if the parties agree, the complainant and the police officer, to have them come together. And so for that, we did request that position be created in our office. The second investment was for a year-long internship for high school and college students to participate in police reform efforts within our office. So that is an exciting program that we would be running directly out of OPAT. We have actually started to do some of that work inside of OPAT by having our office become a partner with youth engagement, working with that office. We will have 2 summer youth work with us this summer. We have started the interview process, so we are happy to have youth start to work this summer, work on a youth advisory council that I've spoken about, and very excited to see that happen. And so that's the second investment. The third investment is also in the ordinance. There is a requirement in our semi-annual report, as well as other parts of the ordinance that it does speak on us working through some equity tools, and we're putting out data on BIPOC hiring, retention, and promotion practices. Because of that, we thought it was very important to have a consultant really look into how BPD is looking at their hiring, retention, and promotion practices. And so we did get funding to have that consultant. We are working to have a interdepartmental collaboration happen that will not only look at how we look at the RFP that will go out in early fall, but late summer, early fall, but having that team really work together throughout the process to make sure that we not just look at data, but really look at how that work would happen interdepartmental and really bring us all together for some collaborative work. Also, I've met with every city council last month and last week. So it was a good time to really talk about not only what we were looking at in our budget, but really look at what I have done in the last year. So I have a 1-year anniversary last week, and really talk about the foundational work that has been happening, from securing the building that you all have seen, our office space, and still trying to get furniture, but also looking ahead for the next year. So what can we do to get people to know OPAT exists? There's a small number of people who know what we can do here. A lot of people look at it as police misconduct, but also we do a lot of policy work here. There are things that we can do. So moving beyond the marches, looking at policy work that can happen, and really partnering with city councilors to get the message out so that people can come here, look at what they can, people meaning constituents, what they can do to help engage and get the word out about our office. City council was very receptive of what we were doing, and look forward to working with us more. The Post Commission last week also, that's the state reform, our state partner, our counterpart, they issued regulations 550 CMR 1.0 procedural rules for receiving, investigating, hearing, and adjudicating complaints regarding law enforcement officers. In that, in their regs, it laid out how investigations should be conducted in a time frame. We issued and speaking with the OPAC Commission, we talked about the time frame. One of the concerns we had is that there was a 90-day limit. The state basically the state statute says that you have 1 year to complete your investigations from the time that complaints are received. OPAT is not a law enforcement agency as defined by statute, but we do have to send our complaints to Boston Police Department when we receive them. And so we still are working through what we mean in relations to post-commissions and what our work looks like. 90 days obviously is not a long enough time to get complaints received here, get them out to BPD, have them investigated in our office and put before the Civilian Review Board, back to the police commissioner for the discipline action or not to happen, and then back to post-commission. So we're very concerned about that. But the regulation did pass. So we are working with the post-commission on what that would look like for us and how we would not, because there is a way that we can just ask for an extension each time that we would do that, but we would have to ask for one every time we decided that a complaint would need to go toward an investigation, which would be cumbersome and just look like something else more was going on rather than just that the 90 days would potentially just not be enough time. It could take us up to, and I think in speaking with the OPAC Commission, we all agree that it could take a substantial amount of time just to get the complainant to give you all the information you need to even determine whether or not there is an investigation to be had. And just for a host of reasons of just them being available or not. So 90 days just seemed like a very short period of time, especially when we have so many layers to that. So I should have more updates for you, hopefully by the next time the board meets, about what the 90 days looks for us. But we have started those conversations with the Post Commission, and they seem receptive to us not being able to live within those 90 days. Also wanted to give you an update on the police commissioner search. Last month, the mayor's office did put out a job description around that. There is and has been a search committee that the mayor's office had put together. They have hired an outside consultant to help them move this work along. So we're hopeful this summer that there will be a new commissioner that is named. And as that information draws closer, I will let the commissioners know, the board members know what's going on with that. And so I'm going to ask now, as I come to it, I think that's it, I come to an end for my staff. I have some new staff members who are here to come on camera so you can see. We do have, I don't know if you all have met everyone, but I want to make sure that everyone knows who my staff is. And you do get to see who our staff are. I know you have all met John, my chief of staff, my deputy director. We have a new chief of staff, Yasmin. And Yasmin comes from us from Councilor Royal's office. And she started with us last week. She's hit the ground and running. She brings with us a lot of experience from city council and a lot of policy experience. So I'm looking forward for you all to get to know Yasmin as I know her, and our staff is really grown to love her in the last week. And I know that you all will utilize her as much as we utilize her. So Yasmin, you all speak to Ben all the time. If you haven't met Ben, please familiarize yourself with Ben, who's our administrative assistant of boards, Karen, my executive assistant, and my I team, which I call my I team, my investigative team, which consists of Mikkel, Andrew, and Tostri. So Andrew is an administrative intake of all of our complaints that come in, and Mikkel and Tostri do all of our investigations. We are still hiring for 2 investigators and 3 more intake workers. So if you have anyone who is looking for any positions, please still look on the City of Boston's website and send them our way. And we will be putting out the job descriptions for the internships at the end of the summer. And that's all I have. If anyone has any questions, please let me know. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Everett. See if any board members have questions. I think one point question I have is, do you know if there's a target for the commissioner search to be completed, and maybe for the members here, how that kind of affects our work as well?
So the last target date I have was for June for the commissioner to be named. And I believe they are moving along for that. So that's why they put the job description out last month. But again, it depends on, you know, those who apply. They do have a target of June. I don't know what time frame in June, but it's, I believe, closer middle to the end of June that they're hoping to have someone named. But I don't have any updates of how many resumes they've received or anything like that, but I'm happy to find out. But I haven't heard of any updates other than that the job description has gone out.
Thank you. Any other board members have questions on the executive director's report? The Director Everett just ran through. All right. So our next agenda item is the complaint summary and disposition. I'll turn it back to Director Everett and OPAT staff to provide us with those complaint summaries and recommendations from OPAT.
Great, give me 1 second. I just need to pull up that complaint. So I do want to note for you all that when you see, was the link dropped and was it shared with the group? While I was looking at
Yes. Karen dropped it in for the hosts and panelists.
Okay. So for everyone should be a quick one. Do you all want me just to read it through for you all? Do you all want, this is our first one. I'm happy to just run it through what this looks like for you all.
I think running it through makes sense.
So per ordinance, we are required to give you basic information, including the case number. I should say, because cases can be filed online, sometimes you will see that case numbers will vary, and it may seem like this one says 29. Just, I want to be specific about our case system. If someone goes online and they start a case and they don't finish the complaint, it's still already assigned that number. Doesn't mean that we even got the complaint. They just started it, and the system just gives it to them. So we may see case numbers that could be further out. It does not mean necessarily that we have cases in between those numbers. It just means someone could have started something, walked away from it, and it timed out, or they decided not to file the complaint. So just wanted to give that basic housekeeping so that for you and for the public, for your knowledge, how these case numbers can also start to get a little different as time goes on. The investigator handling this case was Mikkel. So the case came in on March 29th. This case involves illegal parking in front of Boston Police Headquarters, which is over here across next to Ruggles Station, T Station, and near Whittier Street Health Center. The complainant called because of police officer cars, both personal and marked police vehicles being parked on the sidewalk. And while we understand the complaint of this complainant, the complainant states that at one point he counted out, or he or she, they counted out 50 police cars, 50 cars being parked on the street. We are, as a staff and as a board, are confined to what we can investigate. So looking at the ordinance, specifically 12-6.7b, we are confined into what we can look at to investigate. And because of that, we found that this complaint is out of scope. And so what we're recommending is that the response, that this case be ruled by the board to be out of scope for our OPAC to investigate. However, we also believe that we do have an obligation as still a city department to direct this complainant to speak to the Boston Transportation Department, as they are responsible for handling all parking concerns and enforcement of off-street parking to handle this situation. So that is the gist of the summary and the findings and what we are recommending to the board today.
Yes, Josh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Director Everett. Just to be clear, is the recommendation that this is outside the scope because it is about parking, or is it because it is about 50 cars at once? For example, if the complaint was, this is this one police car, this is the, I saw this officer, they were parking illegally at this time, might that fit inside the scope of CRB's work, or is it because of the parking?
Well, it's parking. So if there was, it's parking. If it was one officer and there was an exchange with an officer and the officer actually engaged with someone, if there was something else that was going on about the officer's behavior, then that's something we can deal with. It's not something that's inside of our purview. There's a list of things that we can look at that says that we can investigate. Whether someone is parked or illegal, parking is not something that we can actually look at. But if there was an exchange because of the parking, if there was some other conduct or misconduct with the parking, we could. There's not even, we can't even say for sure it is actually police who are parking there. It could be city, it could be Whittier Street Health Center, because it also states that Whittier Street Health is at Whittier Street Health Center. We don't know if Whittier Street Health Center employees are also parking there. It's really unknown actually who is all parking there. It could be a mixture of all. And that's why it really should be something that the Boston Transportation Department looks at and identifying, because we don't have access to RMV records to go run everyone's plate. We would have to stand outside and watch police do this. We'd see who's going. Even then, we would have to identify what's going on.
All right. Next, CRB member, Chris Sumner.
Yeah, for the sake of...
Oh, you went on mute again.
I'm sorry. For the sake of learning from this, if the person had filed a complaint and had registration of police cars, would that then be possible abuse and misuse of power? When a person makes a statement of 50 cars, it's a pretty large number. And if that individual had filed a complaint that she had, that they were actually police cars that she recorded, would then that all rest in this jurisdiction of this committee to weigh on?
Even in that case, I would also say that you would still have to check with Boston Transportation Department, because you don't know Boston Transportation Department because they are the regulators of off-street parking, if they've extended them the courtesy to park over there. We don't know. There's all these questions of whether or not we could, you could look and keep going. You can say, oh, does Boston Transportation Department allow them to park there? Is it someplace that Boston Police has given them the authority, a visitor to park over there for a short period of time? There's a host of reasons why parking is going there. And the main people who can answer that question is the Boston Transportation Department.
CRB member Josh Dankoff.
Thanks. Just as a follow-up, I see the recommendation is that that the complainant be referred to BPD. Is there some way that that OPAT itself can also refer the case in addition directly to the Transportation Department? That would be my recommendation.
Yep. So we can do both. We can reach out to both. We can refer the complainant and also let our our sister brother agency know that we're sending someone over there and ask them to reach out directly.
Yeah, thank you, Josh, on that point. That was going to be kind of my view as well, that we should facilitate that, especially since they made the complaint with us, to facilitate kind of an easier way for them to, interact with BTD, because I think, generally interacting with these systems is difficult, and they provided a detailed explanation as to what the concern was, especially when it comes to folks with disabilities getting access to the sidewalk, and being able to have us be a conduit to connect and give that information to BTD and maybe help that person get an answer and explanation would be, desirable on this end as well. So to the extent I would just kind of perhaps, and I want to get OPAT's view on this, and Director Everett, changing it so that, referring it, that OPAT will refer, and also let them know that we're doing the same, and that this is the department that we're going to reach out to, instead of referring them directly.
Will do.
Yeah.
And just as a point of clarity, what we will do is, in this summary, we will add the CRB recommendation. And then this goes on our website. So we will add that point that we will, the CRB, well, once you vote, whatever you vote on, that the recommendation would be that if you vote for it to be out of scope, and that the staff be directed to contact BTD and connect the complainant and BTD. That's what we will do, and it'll also be posted online.
I have a question.
Go ahead, CRB member Carrie Mace. Sorry about that.
If it is voted not to be out of scope, then what will be the process then?
So you all would have to figure out what it would be. We would have to have a conversation about how it would be in scope. It would be very creative to put it in scope, but you have to figure out what it would be in scope for.
Got it.
Okay. Any other comments from the board? Okay. See no comments. So thank you, Director Everett and OPAT, for taking on and explaining the complaint number 29. Just before we go on and vote, just want to make sure that I think that was a great clarifying question, CRB member Carrie Mays. I think it was really relevant. And given that comment, I think we'll just split the vote in two. Just I tend to do, I do agree that it may be out of scope, given that it interacts with another agency, BTD, that may be better suited. But I think it may be a good idea to just have that vote clearly right now, that it is out of scope, and then the second vote be to dismiss the complaint and connect the complainant directly with BTD. So motion for the first vote to vote that this complaint number 29 is out of scope, and I will do a roll call we'll start with Natalie Carruthers. You will say aye if you think it is out of scope. So, nay if you think it is not, or you abstain. So this complaint is out of scope. This is a vote to say it is out of scope. Natalie,
It is
aye or nay?
out of scope.
Aye. Okay, next, Reverend Wayne Daly.
Aye.
Aye. Joshua Dankoff.
Aye.
Aye. Ann Hernandez.
Aye.
Carrie Mace.
Aye.
Amy McNamee.
Aye.
Tara Register.
Aye.
B. Chris Summer.
Aye.
And myself, I vote aye as well. Next vote will be to adopt the recommendation of OPAT that having voted now that the complaint is out of scope, that the next step here is to connect the complainant with BTD so that they can address the complaint about the parking directly. So we're going to move to vote on that recommendation to dismiss the complaint and direct the complainant directly to BTD and make the connection with the complainant to BTD to address the complaint about parking. So we'll start again with Natalie Carruthers, and I would be, you agree with that recommendation?
Aye.
Aye. Reverend Wayne Daly.
Aye.
Josh Dankoff.
Aye.
Ann Hernandez.
Aye.
Carrie Mays.
Nay.
Nay. Amy McNamee.
Aye.
Tara Register.
Aye.
B. Chris Sumner.
Aye.
And myself, Chair Peter Alvarez, aye. So we have 8 ayes and 1 nay. Ayes to have it. For the recommendation to dismiss this complaint and connect the complainant directly with BTD by OPAT facilitating that connection with BTD.
I'm sorry. Are you saying BPD as in like?
BTD. Sorry, Boston Transportation Department.
Oh, okay. Aye. Sorry.
Aye. All right. So we have 9 out of 9. Okay. Thank you. So striking the nay from CRB member Carrie Mays, we have 9 out of 9 ayes to connect the complainant. OPAT will connect the complainant directly with BTD to address the complaint about parking for complaint number 29. Okay. Stephanie, Director Everett, do you have any additional comment there, or we can?
No, we will make sure that the summary goes up with the recommendations and vote of the board.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So the CRB has no other cases before it as of this meeting, and OPAT staff will take the appropriate actions to notify the parties involved in case number 29. Now we'll go, we have a CRB member, Josh Dankoff.
Yeah, I just want to say, my fellow member, I believe it was CRB member Sumner, did bring up an interesting point, whether this parking issue is an abuse of authority. And I think it's an interesting question. And I just, with that, I just have a question. This is being our first vote and decision as a board. If an issue comes up in the future related to this or similar to this, is there any precedent that is set by us voting in a certain thing? And if we decide as a board based on similar or different circumstances, we can decide something different in the future. There's no sort of precedent setting in a binding way. Is there? It's a question, I guess, for Director Everett or the chair.
I directed to Director Everett, but my first inclination would be everything's going to be case by case. We'll look at OPAT's recommendation, and we looked at it here, and we, as the chair, I bifurcated it into 2 votes because I wanted to make it clear, within scope for this particular situation, and then what the recommendation was. But I'll let Director Everett add any color to that.
So I thank you for the question. I would approach every case as a new case. I believe that in every situation, we should you as a board, because we as a staff are going to look at every case as a different situation. We're not going to compare what happened in one case and present it to you and say, remember when, because I believe that, you know, even the most minute detail can be a game changer in the outcome. And so for that, we will present them without a memory of the other. And also, I would also remind the board members that you do have a policy arm attached to you, that if you feel that there is something that we should look at as a policy, then that is something that you also need to talk to us about. There is another way for us to deal with certain things. There is that, again, this is why the community mediator is going to be a big deal. It's a reason why we do have the policy on. There are other avenues that we can take, that we can look at. In this case, there's not a specific officer or officers that we would be looking at, but we can look at the policy and see as a whole if the police department at headquarters needs to change the policy around parking, working with Boston Transportation, and figuring out different ways to park safely to make sure those who are differently abled are able to access the sidewalk safely, and have the same usage as everyone else has with access and services. So there are different ways that we can approach this that does not set a precedent. It actually calls an action for us to do something different.
Thank you, Director Everett, and thank you, Josh, CRB member Josh Dankoff, for that question. I actually think that as we move on to new business, and this is kind of one of the things that can fall into that arena, and I'm glad that Director Everett mentioned the policy arm of CRB, and that we can, you know, request that OPAT look into different policies. And so right now in new business, it would be the time to ask any questions.
Excuse me, Chair. Before we move on, I just wanted to make sure that we acknowledged that there was another case that was originally posted on the clerk's office that we pulled down for today.
Okay.
And I know if other board members, when we sent it out, there was, I think it's case number
19.
19.
Case number 19.
So just to acknowledge that this is one of the cases that we did do a final look at, and I decided that there were this minute issue that made me want to look at it again before it was presented to the board. So that case will be presented to the board at a later date. But it was something that we were looking at 4 o'clock last night. But I did not want to not acknowledge case number 19. It is a case that was going to be before the board today, but as a final, probably OCD-ish look at all the stuff for today, I saw one minute detail that I thought that we should really dive in deep into prior to presentment to the board. So that is why it's not before the board today.
Thank you on that. So here in the new business section, it's, you know, for board members, if you have questions about the position, the board, and the work that we'll be doing. Also, any policy, you know, any kind of policy things you would like to discuss, we could do so here. And I do think Director Everett, just as a first point and kind of piggybacking off CRB member Josh Dankoff's comment, it may be a good idea for OPAT to kind of look into parking, especially as it intersects with kind of differently abled rights, curb cuts, you know, obstructing sidewalks. I do think, especially as a city of Boston, is not the most accessible as is. And if there's any kind of, you know, policy that we can look into and kind of just recommendations we could make to BPD regarding kind of obstructing curb cuts, obstructing, you know, sidewalks, and kind of, you know, what's their official policy on it and how do they think about it? I think getting information in that regard may be worthwhile, especially given the city that isn't super accessible. I saw CRB member Ann Hernandez's hand, and I wanted to acknowledge.
No, I was just wanted to acknowledge the, I think Joshua had mentioned that there is a participant whose hand is up. So it's just highlighting that.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And if the participant can in the chat, it's just we want to be able to keep the moving and we can address it. We want to make sure everything is kind of on schedule. If they send the comment in the chat, we can address it. And if any CRB members have questions, I do encourage everyone to kind of ask your questions now. And CRB member Josh Stankoff.
Thanks. Chair, just to clarify, are we in the sort of any other business? And if we have questions?
Yes, yeah, we're in the any other business section. So any questions you have for OPAT or just questions you have generally, you know, this is the time to ask it. So we wanted to make sure it was open for CRB members to ask. So go ahead.
Great, thank you. Yeah, the issue I want to bring up is in regards to just sort of furthering this question of policy and policy review in reference to in the OPAT ordinance section 12-16.9 subsection F. That part of the power, one of the powers and duties of the CRB is to provide timely review of existing or proposed Boston Police Department policies and procedures, and provide recommendations for the revisions of those policies and procedures to the police commissioner. And you know, this is our first meeting, and so I want to, I guess, suggest to the chair that when you're putting together future agendas, that perhaps this be a standing agenda item, and you know, if we're meeting quarterly, that that this is something that is discussed on a somewhat regular basis. You know, there are a lot of policies, I imagine, that go through, so there may be some vetting or some deciding that certain policies regarding that are closer to the CRB's mandate rather than some others. But I think this is an opportunity for the CRB to have an input, and I just want to suggest that this be something that's a standing issue agenda item.
Thank you for that, CRB member Josh Stankoff. I think that's a great idea, especially when new policies are implemented or any of the kind of current policies, to the extent OPAT's looking at them and having discussions about them. You know, it should be a standing agenda item, and sometimes there won't be any and we could just move on, but just create the space to do so. Wanted to get OPAT's view. Director Everett, do you have a view on this?
So we do for the OPAT commission meetings, the community meetings, we give updates on, as soon as we get all of the, there's not BPD policy and changes. Like, there's not a guarantee that there'll be a new one that comes out for a CRB meeting. We get updates for our OPAT commission community meetings. So that's when they happen. In order for there to be a full discussion, I think we need to have a fuller discussion with the OPAT commission meeting about how we engage. It needs to be a smaller meeting. I just have to figure out how we're going to engage this, because in order, Josh loves policy as much as I do. We've had this conversation, but I think, you know, I'm going to come in with a little pen popper right now. To have a conversation about policy at every meeting would take up substantial amount of time when you have cases to review without having first reviewed the policy, come up with a summary of the policy, and had time to fully discuss it in a subgroup somewhere. And so we would have to figure out who's going to be in a subgroup, and then also have figured out who the members are, who they are going to be. So I'm happy to have that conversation. It's just, we need to get there. I'm not saying that we can't get there. I think as a commission, we need to figure out when that is, and adding that on. So we just have to, as a commission, I think we could figure out when we have, again, we have these, I think the best time to do them, Josh, to answer your question, would be during the OPAT commission meetings, which are quarterly, the community meetings, because that's when the BPD gives us their updates for those community meetings, because we go out 4 times a year. and we report out and we receive information. So that's when we do receive public comments from the community. It is their time to engage us and we engage them. I think that's a great time right after that meeting, because I believe our meetings for the CRB are also the same time as the OPAC commission meetings. I think they're like a month apart. I think that's a great time for the policy discussion to happen so that all of those recommendations can come out at the same time. But if there's something substantial, I'm happy to bring it to the board. I just don't know how all of that works without everyone reading. I don't know if everyone on here has read all of the rules. Like, it's just, I think it's a longer conversation. I'm happy to have the longer conversation, Josh, but I think you know what I'm saying to you. It's a longer conversation.
Okay, so just to repeat what it said is just to clarify that the OPAT meeting will be where there's public comment, but also where the police department gives their their overview or an update on policy, and it may be best to have it there. And then possibly, I would think, just putting this out there, that I would think that to the extent CRB meetings being held later, that could be added to the extent it's something that's within our purview versus, IOP or CRB's purview. If the policy intersects there that we hear at the commission meeting, it could be something that goes on the agenda there, but to kind of bring it up in the first instance would be coming from the commission. Is that, and I mean, obviously members here can bring up in new business policies that perhaps they've seen, but is that it, Director Everett?
Yes, but I obviously would, if something new comes up, like the post-commission and their regulations coming up, I'm going to bring that to the board. That just happened last week. Where this board meets every quarter, so every 4 months. It's gonna have this for 3 months. It's gonna keep doing this. It's on the same line as the commission meetings. So it's not that much of a delay. I think we just need to have a bigger conversation about who would sit on the policy meeting. It would actually serve as a subcommittee, because you would have to look at what the old policy was, what the new policy is, because what it requires is for you to make recommendations if there's going to be any changes to it. It's just a bigger conversation. I'm definitely happy to have it. I love policy work. I'm not saying no to it. It's just who wants to be a part of it, when are we going to do it, and where does it live at in between these two groups, because it's the OPAC commission as well as the CRB.
All right. CRB member Josh Stankoff.
Thank you for the explanation, and I support such a subcommittee, and if we get to that point, we'd be happy to discuss joining such a subcommittee.
Yeah, so I guess in that regard, maybe next CRB meeting as one of the items on the agenda would just be kind of how subcommittees formed, and we don't have to have the answer there, but maybe just some additional kind of items on that in particular, just so kind of as an update to this specific conversation about policy, just so, for the next meeting, we should be able to kind of talk about it a little bit more. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. I got a nod from Director Everett, so I'll take that as a yes.
Josh and I have this conversation. Josh knows that I'm gung-ho to do this anytime. He can call me and I can spend hours talking to him. It's other members, they want to be involved. I think it doesn't happen every day. It's not like every week that policy changes. So if the chair is willing to name a subgroup, I'm willing to have that conversation with those who want to do it, and then figuring out a realistic schedule for the members to meet. Obviously, I'm not a member of CRB, so you would need to name the board member who it's a structural change a structure that needs to be created within the board. And I am happy with my staff to assist in what that looks like. So it's really something that the board should decide to do, and whatever way that we can support the work, I'm happy to do.
Okay, sounds great. Think about that and talk to OPAT staff and see how we can facilitate that to the extent it's desired. Just wanted to address a couple of comments because I think they're really quick. I think the first one regarding the calendar, what times, I think OPAT staff, if you could give us a sense of the timing on for the meetings. I know that they're usually posted about a week in advance, but perhaps it could be sooner.
So I believe that for the August meeting, we're still going to do the 11 a.m. It seems to work. If board members want to do a 10 a.m., that's fine, but 11 a.m. seems to work for now. I know that when we spoke before, we were looking at a longer meeting as time goes on, but I'm looking for 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. for the next meeting in August. And obviously when we do the one in person, we can vote on that in August for the fall one. But you can plan for 11 a.m. in August.
Okay, 11 a.m. in August. And just a point on public comment, the commission meetings are set up for more public comment. At CRB meetings, we're going to be discussing the items on the agenda, but also there'll be executive sessions where we kind of deliberate on cases. That's going to be the structure most of the times. And we'll, reconvene later to adjourn the meeting. But to the extent that there's updates or questions regarding dispositions and decisions made at CRB meetings, it's best to bring it to the commission, one, to conserve resources, commission, 3 folks, we can share information there and have the public comment, because there are public comment sessions there at the commission meetings and the community meetings. And that's where it's best, kind of best made. I think, to the extent people put things in the chat like they are now and we're addressing them, we'll do so. But I think we want to be able to conserve resources, especially when we're going to be, going into executive sessions for some time, reviewing case materials, and that's going to take a substantial amount of time. Again, the commission meetings will be having public comment open, and on a case-by-case basis, there may be need for public comment at CRB meetings, but I really see the commission as having that role. We could discuss further, but just wanted to point that out. I see another question that I wanted to get addressed from OPAT, because I think there is some question about this. And one of the attendees here said, if a community member goes to internal affairs to make a report, are they directed to OPAT in all cases?
No. If you go to the Boston Police Department to file a complaint, you would file a complaint with the Boston Police Department. If you come to, no different if you came to our offices at 2201 Washington Street, I feel like I'm commercial, in Nubian Square, we would not advise you that you would go to Boston Police Department unless you asked us if there's a different place, or you can file it at the Post Commission. You actually can file it at the Boston Police Department, the Post Commission, or at OPAT. You have 3 options of where you can file complaints at now, but they are not directed. The way that Boston Police Department would send you to our office is if you did receive a finding from Boston Police Department and you did not like the finding, you wanted to appeal. All appeals do come to the Office of Police Accountability and Transparency.
Is there any discussion with City Council to make that kind of compulsory? Or is City Council discussing that?
No, because there's a Internal Affairs Department, the complaints go there. We do not handle criminal complaints, so you still have to have complaints go there. If criminal complaints go here, we're working that out. So there are the complaints, and this is why year 2, we did year 1 and we're still gonna do it in year 2, is doing foundational building, but year 2 is a lot more effort, and that's why it started with meeting with all the city councilors. It's really working with them to get the constituents to know that their constituents know that we exist, where we are located, what services that we provide, and how we can be a resource. And so really getting to know OPAT is what we are looking forward to doing in year 2. And so we are relying on the public to do it, having these board meetings, doing a lot of work in that area, working with the communications chief, Jessica Pierre, to really work on how do we get that information out there, because a lot of people do not know what we do here. There was a lot of effort around police reforms a couple of years ago, but we have to do the work to, again, move beyond the marches. And what does that look like from the policy standpoint, police misconduct, and where the community can seek help at or be of support here. So we're doing the work in year 2, and we will be relying on you all as board members to help us do that work too.
To the extent thinking about this generally, to the extent there's room, and it doesn't necessarily have to be,
Chair,
compulsory.
Chair,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I think there was a request to slow down for the.
Oh, okay.
I can see it.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for that, CRB member Ann Hernandez. To the extent there's an opportunity to collaborate with BPD in terms of website or posting of CRB, like you can make your complaint here. I don't know, I think that would be worthwhile in looking into, like where someone goes on the BPD website or goes to make a complaint, there could be, the OPAT, you can make a complaint at the Civilian Review Board too. Yeah, where it's not compulsory, but there's a posting or something of that nature, just something to think about as we're discussing this.
So, I'm gonna look. Don't quote me on this, but there is, I apologize, you all can see me, but I'm looking online, but I believe there is a link somewhere and someone from my team can look it up. But there is a link from BPD to us somewhere on their website. We do work collaboratively with BPD on things. And so they did link our website. I'm just trying to figure out if I can find it. If I can find it, I will drop it in the chat. Yeah. But there is a link.
Yeah, I understand the concern that some of the members of the community are making with respect to just having that automatic, if not automatic, which is they're not required to by the ordinance, but having kind of, different spaces where when folks go and encounter them, instead of having to make the complaint internally because they may or may not know about OPAT, having that space that, different avenues from the BPD website or even a posting there, absent an ordinance, it can't be automatic, but yeah, that I understand that complaint, and I'm, sympathetic to that for sure. Wanted to see if any more on this topic, but also, CRB member Carrie Mays has her hand up.
Yeah, I see a lot of comments talking about the outreach. I was wondering who was in charge of the community engagement outreach of informing the community that OPAT and the Civilian Review Board exist and these resources exist.
Great question. I'm gonna
right now it's the mayor, it's our communications office. We just started doing it. So, oh, I don't know, I just hit something, sorry. Hopefully you can still see me. My screen just went blank. So it is our collective responsibility. It's your collective responsibility. It's everyone's collective responsibility to let everyone know. But we are working with the mayor's office, the chief of communication, like I was just saying. It's something that we are working on. We are being more visible. So again, like we went out to the job fairs for youth enrichment programs for the summer. We are going to be at Coffee in the Parks. We're doing things to make ourselves more visible. We have our website where we put things on there. So boston.gov/OPAT. We put things out there, obviously, because of confidentiality of why people come to us. We're not going to have a Twitter account. We're not going to have, we're not going to have these accounts that are normal, ways of reaching out to people because of the confidentiality. No one wants to say we resolved 10 cases today, will we? That's not what we can do. So it is the real grassroots, getting out there, letting people know who we are, what they can do in our office and how we can be supportive of them. So that's where we're at right now. Sorry, I'm still looking for this. John, if you're on, do you remember where they linked their account to us? I can't. I'm trying to pull up BPD really quick.
No, I'll have to check and I'll share that with you if I find it.
I know it says transparency site.
Great question, CRB member Carrie Mays. I think, it's important to, people can utilize the resources, and the more folks are actually making their claims directly to CRB, the better, so that it doesn't get kind of caught up in internal affairs investigations, and it could be kind of done through this avenue is always preferable. So the more we get the word out, the better. Just wanted to see if and hear any other questions from board members about OPAT, questions for OPAT, the director, CRB generally. Want to make sure it remains open here. Okay. CRB member Josh Stankoff.
What is the status of the matrix that is referenced in the ordinance for making recommendations on misconduct for CRB?
We don't have one yet. It's still in draft form. It's something that has to come from the commissioner. So I have not seen it, but I do know it will be progressive, and I don't have one yet. We're still waiting.
All right. So I think there's no other questions from CRB members. Really quick. All right. Okay, moving along. Want to thank everyone very much for being here. I'm going to motion to adjourn the meeting until our next CRB meeting in August. Do we have a second?
Wait 1 second.
Oh, go ahead.
So there is a link. So in more resources on this link, sorry, I'm not looking at you all. You can find that BPD does say to file a complaint, you can come to us.
Good.
So they explicitly say complaints against BPD officers can also be filed through OPAT.
Oh, that's great.
And it also tells them they can also file it at Post Commission.
Thank you for putting that into the chat and bringing that forward.
I knew they put something up. I just couldn't remember where it was at. John and I believe one of our public members also put it up. So I appreciate everyone who threw it in the chat. You all are lifesavers.
Awesome. So now I would do that again. So I want to thank everyone again very much, our interpreters, our members of the public that are here, and providing very helpful and useful questions and comments in the comment section. All of the board members here, thank you for the inaugural meeting. We'll have more work to do as more cases come. For fellow board members, I can expect these meetings will get longer, the more cases that come before us, and we'll have to go into executive sessions. So I look forward to working with everyone here and working with OPAT and members of the public to do this work. So with that, I want a motion to adjourn our first inaugural CRB meeting. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Amy, CRB member Amy McNamee. So all in favor, we can do a voice vote here. You can say aye. To adjourn the meeting.
Aye.
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 All opposed, say nay. If you abstain, please say so. Okay, the ayes have it, unanimous vote of the CRB members to adjourn the meeting. Thank you all for attending. The next meeting will be August 9th, Tuesday, August 9th, 2022. Will be at the same time, starting at 11 a.m. Thank you all for making it here, and I appreciate everyone here at the first inaugural meeting of the CRB.
Great. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good week.
Bye, everyone.
Good week,
Bye.
everybody.